Good evening. Thank you. Serving as chair of the 50th Anniversary Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the College of Education's second lecture in our series of 4. These events serve as a mechanism for celebrating our past while looking forward to an exciting future. Our future is represented tonight by our volunteer hosts who were so gracious to come from the e-board of our Student Council for Exceptional Children. So thank you for your assistance tonight. Thank you to the Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Elaine Collins, who has consistently supported our efforts. Unfortunately, Dean Collins couldn't be with us this evening, but thanks to her and from the committee for her commitment and dedication throughout this past 20-plus months of preparation. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Might there be alums from the college here tonight? There you go. Thank you. All right. And the COE faculty, thank you for being here tonight. Yes? And any of our Lib 100 students? Any of you? Okay, well, thank you. The committee appreciates your attendance and would encourage you to also attend our last 2 series. One will take place on March the 24th, right here in Loosemore Auditorium. It's entitled Reflections and Predictions, sort of a cross between a TED Talk and a last lecture. The session will showcase about 7, maybe 8 alumni, plus Dean Collins. They're going to get maybe 7 to 10 minutes. And they're going to share their experiences, their reflections, and future hopes and predictions as they feel relate to the world of education, using whichever method they choose. So it might be funny, it might be forthright, it might be poignant, or reflective. It could be a drama skit, it could be music, it could be, in fact, just a conversation. Then on Wednesday, April the 15th, Dr. Rick Borum and Susan Ford Bales will be with us. We'll be at the Seidman Forum facility, and they're going to be talking about the life and education of Gerald R. Ford. And now will Doug Bussman, a faculty member within the College of Education and a wonderful colleague within Leadership and Learning, a department within the College of Education. He's going to join me up here, and his role tonight will be to introduce our distinguished panel and facilitate their discussion this evening. Thank you, Dr. Bussman.
Thank you, Dr. McCrae. Our procedure for tonight is as follows. I will ask the panel a series of 4 questions, time permitting. The questions are open-ended and designed to allow each member to contribute to the discussion as they see fit to contribute. So I tried not to make them yes or no questions. Hopefully they'll talk. We will end the panel portion of the evening around 7:15. And my notes say when State Superintendent Mike Flanagan will arrive from a state board meeting in Lansing for a 15-minute presentation to lend his insights into education in Michigan. However, much to my surprise, I was out in the reception area and there was Dr. Flanagan, so he's here. But we'll still follow our procedure. At 7:30, we'll open the floor to questions for State Superintendent Flanagan and our panel, if they're gracious to stay. And then the evening's events will conclude at approximately 7:55, when Professor McCrae will present concluding remarks in appreciation of tonight's guests. So please allow me to introduce our distinguished panel at this time. We'll start with Deputy Superintendent Mrs. Carolyn J. Evans. She is currently the Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Learning for Grand Rapids Public Schools. She has served in Grand Rapids Public Schools as a teacher, a reading teacher, the principal of a highly successful Central City school, Director of Elementary Literacy, Director of the Reading First Grant, Executive Director of Elementary Leadership, and the Chief Academic Officer, including curriculum. Currently, Mrs. Evans is responsible for K-12 curriculum, as well as school and district common assessments, foreign language and fine arts, libraries, and is the District Academic Achievement Committee representative, which is a subcommittee to the Board of Education. Mrs. Evans holds an associate's degree from Grand Rapids Community College, a Bachelor of Arts degree from Michigan State University, a Master of Arts degree from Grand Valley State University, and has studied with the Harvard Change Group. On the far end, Superintendent Dirk Wheeldryer is in his 7th year as superintendent of Fenville Public Schools. He is a graduate of Hope College with master's degrees from Nazareth College in Kalamazoo and Western Michigan University, and an education specialist degree from Grand Valley State University. Dirk taught high school social studies for 16 years at Jenison Public Schools, where he served as sponsor or advisor for numerous student organizations, coached 19 seasons of basketball, bless your heart, and led 6 student trips to Europe. He then became principal of Martin Middle and High School, where he served for 5 years before taking his current position. Superintendent Wheeldryer grew up as the son of a school administrator in Mattawan, Michigan, where his father was elementary principal for 9 years and superintendent for 31. Closest to me, Superintendent Dr. Nick Siglarek became superintendent of Baldwin Community Schools at age 29, making him the youngest superintendent in the state of Michigan. Following his service in Baldwin, Dr. Siglarek was appointed superintendent of Fruitport Community Schools, where he served for the next 5 years. Dr. Siglarek was then appointed superintendent of Hudsonville Public Schools, where he has been serving since 2009. In 2014, Dr. Siglarek received his Doctor of Education degree from Eastern Michigan University, completing his dissertation on an investigation of the relationship between Michigan Department of Education school achievement ranking and schools' percentage of economically disadvantaged students. So please welcome our panel. So I will begin then with Superintendent Siglarek and ask you to open, and then ask Deputy Superintendent Evans and Dirk if you would please join in. My first question would be, Dr. Siglarek, what do you believe is the greatest challenge facing public education today, and why do you believe this?
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm a proud Laker and appreciate my time, very fond memories at Grand Valley, and very grateful for the education that I received here. You know, when I was posed this question, I couldn't help but to think of a time when I was much younger, and one of my favorite childhood games was tug of war. You know, that game where you're with a bunch of buddies and you're challenging someone else, and you have to work together as a team and pull on that rope and get that white handkerchief to come on your side. I can't help but to think, when I think about the challenges that face public education, that we have so many creative, innovative, brilliant minds out there working on trying to improve a system, and at times it feels like all of us are tugging at the rope in different spots. We have an opportunity in front of us to do great things for our future generations. And my hope and prayer is that we figure it out and pull on that rope in the same direction at the same time with great force. We have great ideas out there on what it is we need to do as an education system to improve, whether it's proposed legislation, whether it's school board members with their own ideas and philosophies behind what's going to make a great system. And I look forward to the next question when you talk about hope, because I truly do believe and hope that one day all of our educators, teachers, leaders, school board members, legislators are going to pull on that rope together at the same time with great force.
Thank you. I am going to kind of summarize the question. The question had to do with the greatest challenge.
Yes.
So, and I would agree with you that coming to a consensus about direction is extremely important. However, I do have another thought, and that has to do with the divide, the achievement gap that we have experienced probably since the onset of formal education. I would think at this point, one of our greatest challenges when I look at the demographics of our nation and world and planet is understanding how to educate students of all backgrounds well, regardless of their zip code or the family or neighborhood from which they may come. Right now, I'm not sure that we completely understand how that happens, but we know that we see a persistent gap that that reflects our socioeconomic lines, and we have not been successful in changing the trajectory of students who come from households that are struggling to ensure that we get the majority of those students through our organizations and our schools successfully. So right now, I would say not only in Grand Rapids or Michigan, but across this nation and across this world, our greatest challenge at this time, I believe, is understanding how to educate all students. And this question is, I think, extremely important because we now live in an age where that question is more important than it has been since the onset, probably, of mankind. Our questions and the debate that is going on across the station about the health and well-being of not only our nations, but nations across the world in terms of environment, the economics, will cause us to look for the very brightest minds, regardless of what that child may look like or where that child may come from. I think we all benefit from educating students well.
And I would agree with that, and the perspective I'm going to kind of come at that from is the background of Fenville Public Schools, where I'm currently working. It's a rural district, and our elementary school is pushing 80% free and reduced lunch. So we have a high degree of rural poverty. And exactly what you're talking about, I think I see in our situation as well. And for me, one of the greatest challenges that I think faces our students, and it again goes to what Nick was talking about, is pulling on the same rope. We have to be committed that all students are going to get the quality education that they need. This afternoon, I was at a meeting trying to get broadband internet access to all parts of Allegan County. We have large swaths of our district where our students cannot get access to affordable internet. How are they going to then be able to compete on an equal station with students in other communities? I think it's a real issue, and that's one that when we talk about pulling on the rope in the same direction, I think we all have to be committed, that it's going to be all students that we're going to try and move to a better future. Because I think all educators, that's what we're committed toward. We need the commitment of all people, education community and outside the education community, to say, these are things that we need to do. And we've really struggled to do that. At this point, for instance, on that issue, you know, it's kind of left to the business community to decide when they're going to expand that. There will probably be very little likelihood that there's going to be a business case to do something like that. So we as a society are going to have to make a determination as to what value we're going to hold on that, and not to leave certain students behind as their fellow students in districts in a more populous area do have different access. One other issue that I also reflect on as I look to the future, you know, right now I really think I'm just so proud of all the people who are involved in education. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a reflection of my growing age, but I do have some concern for the future. And I think that the education profession, we need to continue to encourage talented, dedicated young people to become involved in education. And I have a little bit of concern that there's a feeling out there that maybe some folks are choosing different careers than those of us who chose education at a different point in time. Nick and I, we've been talking because both of our parents were also superintendents, so we've grown up in education. It's a part of our family. And we both feel, I know Nick does too, just so strongly about education. And I just, from a legacy standpoint, really hope that we can continue to lift up the education profession, to make it a valued part of our society. And that will help to create that pull to get new students interested. So those are a couple of challenges I feel are facing us as a society.
So I would like to move from challenges. As educators, we are in the business of hope. And Deputy Superintendent Evans, I'd like to ask you to lead off on the response to our next question. What do you believe is the greatest hope for public education, and why do you believe this?
Well, I thought a lot about this, and it's very difficult to name one thing, because when I walk into a school or a classroom, I'm always encouraged by the bright minds that are being taught in our classrooms and the wonderful teachers that we have. But if I had to choose one thing to highlight tonight, I would say that change in education comes very slowly. But I do think that recently, our state has been very innovative and have made great strides in the area of leadership. And it is important because it is very difficult to bring about real change when we don't change the deep structures that keep a culture in place. When we really want to see change in our schools, it really calls for a systemic change, and very often change that starts at the state level. And that change enables a district or classroom to do the kinds of things that they need to do in a meaningful way. And recently, I've seen decisions that have been made that have been bold and dynamic, even as far as the teacher evaluation system. And I know it's not a perfect system, but it is saying that we value our teachers enough to give them good feedback so that they could grow as professionals. And it's not all punitive, but we need to also put support systems and mechanisms in place. I think that's important. Without the state's leadership, our districts won't be able to make the kinds of changes that have come about as a result of their decision making. I think the other decision that they have made that is important has to do with the curriculum. In spite of all of the controversy that's out there, there is, and it's not a perfect system, I will say that. But it does recognize the need for 21st century skills and thinkers. And unless we move in that direction, we stay in the same place. And we know that we have structures in our educational system that have been in place for probably 50 years or more. So I guess if I am encouraged because, of course, no one has said that every decision has been perfect, but there has been bold leadership at the state level that has brought or has begun to bring about systemic change and has addressed the deep structures that hold things in place. So I'm most encouraged by that.
I think that's very, very well said. As you're talking about that, I'm reflecting on some of the things in our immediate region here that have been going on. And one of the symbols, I think, of great hope is the great collaboration that has been established within this area in something called the Reading Now Network. The superintendents from a 13-county area here in West Michigan got together and said, we really need to change the game here, and we need to make a commitment that all of our students in this region are going to be successful readers by 3rd grade. And instead of competing against one another, let's share, let's work together and create a best practices. And there is going to be a big conference coming up where we talk about some of these things. There are over 200 people signed up. So I just think the collaboration is great. And that's what really, to me, Doug, when I always reflect on hope, it is the people, it's the relationships, it's the folks involved in education, the commitment. As you walk into those classrooms or you see those folks who are there late at night working to prepare for the students that they're going to be seeing. And that's what really drives that hope idea to me.
So, I mean, Dr. Comier said it best, right? No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And that is, I think, what you're hearing. The hope is really in the classroom. It's seeing our teachers make authentic connections with kids, knowing that students feel cared about and loved. A colleague out in the audience, Superintendent McPhee, brought a speaker to the Ottawa Area Center, Jamie Vollmer, and I don't know if anyone has ever read his work, but he uses a great analogy about, I think, about hope. It's the blueberry story, and if you will just indulge me briefly. He was a business leader, businessman that was very successful in making ice cream, best ice cream in America, as he says it. He was trying to reform public education, and he had the answers because he was able to do it in the business world. He made the best ice cream. And so he was going to inform public education on what they needed to do in order to have a better outcome, better students. And so he went into a big auditorium and started to talk about total quality management and zero defects, and a little old lady in the back room, very unassuming, raises her hand and said, we were told that you make good ice cream. And he says, Miss, I make the best ice cream. And she said, well, what happens when you go on the loading dock and you get a delivery of blueberries that don't meet your standards? And he paused and he said, well, we send them back. And she said, that's it exactly. We don't send any student back. We teach the gifted. We teach the challenged. We teach the students that have ADD. We teach all students. That's my hope, is that we continue to develop teachers that truly have a passion to teach all students, because that's what's going to make a difference.
So I want to keep us moving in the direction of hope, and I would ask that the three of you to reflect a little bit, to think ahead in terms of a vision for greatness for public education. So if we're going someplace, what does that place look like? And I would start with Superintendent Wheeldryer and ask you, what does your vision for greatness in public education look like?
Well, Nick, I think, started us down that path already with that story right there, and that's kind of where I was thinking of heading with this question, because that idea that we're bringing all students who walk in the door, no matter what their background, no matter what they've been through at home, no matter what may have transpired in their life in the last 24 hours or from the time they were born. And we are going to bring them all to a point where they maximize their potential. The current phrase out there nowadays is career and college ready. But I even think it's more than that. I think it's to maximize themselves as a person. And to me, that's when we will have achieved greatness in public education. I think we work every day toward that end. And again, those people that are dedicated and developing those relationships with students are the ones who really get that done. When we look at how we're going to achieve that vision, there are a lot of different ways that can take place and happen. I think we need to continue to look at, schools are getting more and more loaded on them, but in a sense, I welcome some of that, because I think our schools can really become, in many communities, they are the center of everything that happens. And when we can coordinate together all of the different aspects that will help to provide support for students, I think then we will be headed down the right path. We've been trying to bring in different community support agencies to provide some assistance right there in our community. We've been really working to provide mentoring programs, and it would be a great thing if every student had that mentor type of relationship to help them become all that they can be. And so those are just a few things that come to mind as I'm thinking about that image of greatness. So I think there's more.
Well, I think probably everything has been said. But of course, my thinking around greatness would have to do with when we get to a point where we can ensure that we can first judge students and their families and communities by the content of their character, and believe that they all bring something significant to bear. And I believe each child is created with his or her own set of gifts that could make a significant contribution to our communities, whether it's local or global. So I think we will realize our potential as a community of educators when we are able to meet children where they are and nurture them so that they develop the talents and abilities that they all have.
Superintendent Evans, I could have you read this, but it was, I think you're hearing it loud and clear. I mean, every child has a unique gift, and I think trying to have those gifts be brought out and flourished, because not everyone's going to go to college. Not everyone is going to do what we all maybe aspire to do, but there's an individual gift that every child holds. And so I think we'll reach to that greatness when we can develop those gifts and have the student recognize what those are to be contributing members of society.
So it leads me to wonder, and I'll ask a probing question here.
This is like we're back in class with you.
Thank you, Dirk. What does that look like? So when I think about going to school, I think about going through the front door, and I think about walking down the hallway, and I think about the classrooms on either side, and I think about social studies and language arts and music and those things. What looks different? If I were to come to your school district, and maybe, I don't know if 5 years is too short a time, but I believe that with the pace of change, 5 years may not be that close a time. So in this era that we live in, if I was to visit your school district, and I'll leave it broader than that, 5 years from now, what would look different? Would anything look different? And I'll direct that to Deputy Superintendent Evans, if I could.
Okay, what would look differently 5 years now? I think you will see the evidence of coherence, that you would see a team that is teaming and making decisions as a collective leadership group, first of all, and not individually. I think that's what you'd see at the district level, and you could start to see now. I think we've made great strides. But I also think there is an excitement in our district around our new leadership that we have. And I think the ability to choose the professional development that teachers are engaging in, and to identify their individual paths for improvement, I think that is leading to new optimism that perhaps we have not seen before. And I think whenever we see teachers that are encouraged and excited, it just naturally spills over to our students. And I think that's what you're going to see. I think you will continually see that in our buildings.
I think one of the things that's really been moving a lot in the last few years, and I really see it continuing to move, and I think many of us in education were feeling that, and Superintendent Flanagan has really been committed to this idea, and the governor has also really stated this, is this expansion of the idea that it's not just a K-12 system, that it is from birth until students are done with their university education, that we need to have a much more coordinated, coherent, ongoing system. And I think we've taken great strides in that. You talked about the high school, and it made me think of early college sorts of programming that's happening. We just announced it in our county today, and Ottawa had it last year, and more have been doing it, where we're trying to have a more seamless integration between what's happening in the high school into the community college arena. And all of the preschool programming that's going on, you know, we've got those preschools in our elementary building so that they can move right on through and be integrated right into the system. So to me, that change is underway, and I think that's part of the pace of change that's going to continue. Education is also starting to try and do even a better job than we have for years on trying to meet students where they are, and design programming that's more set up on an individual basis to meet them, and get farther and farther away from the industrial model of education. I think we've come a ways, we've got a long ways to go, but we've started down that path, and I think that that's another area that you're going to see continue to progress over time.
So you enter into Hudsonville High School 5 years from now.
Yes.
And I hope, my hope is that you continue to see student leaders that are servant leaders, that they recognize there's more than just themselves. There's a greater community that needs them. I hope you see continued partnerships. We feel very fortunate to have a partnership with Van Andel Research Institute, and our science program is really taking the challenge of thinking and acting like scientists, so our students see authentic work being done, that they're solving problems that matter and that makes a difference. It's making those connections, and we're hopeful that that can transform into other areas as well. But first and foremost, I hope you see students that are respectful, are welcoming, and I hope that they're that now. I know they are, I see that, and I hope that you would see that in 5 years as well.
We're getting close to the end of the panel portion of this segment, and I'm debating about going off script and asking one follow-up question. I'm going to ask it anyway. So, do the three of you see school buildings? Do you see brick and mortar school buildings 10 years from now, 15 years from now?
One of the things I struggle with the new movement, and I think you've heard it from all three of us, is relationships matter. And the thing that I have some internal struggle with is the push and pull between trying to provide opportunities like online education and yet still striving to keep kids connected. And so that, to me, is a real question in my mind. I think there's always going to be a place for brick and mortar. I do. It is maybe, though, what is the model within that? And is the school then the center point, the touchstone for students to come and get focused or get this, get that, and then head back out again? And then maybe there will be more learning at home, like most of us have been doing a lot with seat time waivers, for instance, and students working from home on things, much like at the university level, more and more courses being done distance learning style. I can definitely see that, but to me, there's still a big need to keep the connectedness, and that's one of the things that makes me a little nervous when we start to say, well, we're not going to have that brick and mortar, because I think that human development side of what the education system does is crucial. It's a crucial element, and for the betterment of our society. I'm an old social studies teacher, so I mean, why was education developed in the first place, public education? It was to create a citizenry. And if we become isolated and sit in homes in front of computer screens, I'm not sure that that develops the kind of society long-term that we want. And so I think there's a place for brick and mortar. It's just how we structure within that is the question, I think.
Yeah, and I would agree. I tend to think that there will be a continuum of opportunities for learning that probably will go from a true online experience to the traditional. I believe that there is a place for technology. I'm not sure, however, that we have quite learned how to use it at a maximum level effectively. I'm not sure that we know everything about how the brain is responding to sitting in front of the screen and learning in that manner. When I'm convinced of that, I may take a different position. But I do think that there is a place for brick and mortar. And I also think that as we move into technology, because it won't go away, there is a need to learn more about how to maintain relationships, even via being online. Whether it is giving feedback, whether it is allowing students more time to work in groups using technology. There is a human element to learning. I'm not convinced that it all has to take place within the walls of a traditional school, but the kind of society that I envision would also push us to use technology in a humane way. And I think that is where we're going to need our students that are sitting in our seats to think for us and think ahead.
I would completely agree. I think that's the continuum that you're speaking of, and you know, I give a lot of credit to Superintendent Flanagan for his vision in terms of the online seat time waivers and trying to push schools in thinking differently about how they deliver education. I am a bit of a traditionalist and believe that kids still need hugs. They still need to feel connected. They still need to have an adult developing a relationship and letting them know that there's someone that cares for them. And it can be done online. I think that there's a place for that, but I do feel there'll be some type of connectedness with brick and mortar schools.
Well, I'd like to just thank our panelists. And to mention it, we're nearing 7:15, and again, my notes say that Mike Flanagan is going to arrive any minute, but I see him right there. So I would ask if you all would be willing, if it's more comfortable to stay there or to move down there, whatever is your preference. And then my thought would be to ask Superintendent Flanagan to present his remarks, and then about 15 minutes, I'm guessing, and then some questions and answers, if you all would be willing to come back up for some questions and answers. Does that sound good to all? So I'll do a little introduction while he's making his way here, that our concluding speaker is State Superintendent of Schools Mike Flanagan. Dr. Flanagan has been the state superintendent in Michigan since 2005. In his role, he drives local, state, and federal policy that focuses on providing a quality education for all students. During his career, Mike has been a superintendent at the local, regional, and now state levels. As state superintendent, Mike Flanagan runs the Michigan Department of Education and delivers leadership and guidance to ensure that every student in Michigan is provided with the best opportunities for success. And so at this time, if it's okay, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. You're welcome.
It's dramatic, but I'm going to tweet this on the way home later, so you better smile because I'm going to talk about where I was tonight. And thanks so much for the invitation. We had a State Board of Ed meeting today, and at first when this came through, it was, you're not going to want to do this. This is on a State Board day, and those are pretty rigorous. And while I'm on that just for a moment, I'm going to introduce a few people in a moment. But I'm not just saying this. I'm retiring this year, so this isn't sucking up to a State Board member, not that I've actually ever done that anyway. But Lupe Ramos Montini is in the back of the room. She has become such a joy to work with as a State Board of Ed member and represents the West Side. And I wanted to say this. I said this at our meeting today. State board members run as Republicans and Democrats. And one of the things I've worked on for years is to try to keep them together. This should not be a partisan effort. And it's difficult when you're in a town where the Republicans are beating up on the Democrats and the Democrats are beating up on the Republicans, and nationally, the story is just as bad. And to their credit, they haven't done this. It takes work. To be blunt, it seemed a little fragile the last two meetings. And I just want to give a specific commendation. I said this today in front of the whole board and whoever, the 5 people who were watching us on the internet, that last month at a key time, this board member, Lupe, reached out and said, if we don't incorporate some of the ideas from the Republicans on the board, and the Republicans are a minority right now, we have no impact across the strait. This is the thing I think I heard Nick, maybe it was Nick, mention about hopefully we can all pull the same way. It's hard to do when you have these separate entities that are on different pages for different reasons, and I can't tell you how courageous that was to say that, because the practical issue is that you're not going to have any progress across the street where the laws are made if we don't, as Democrats in your case, I'm not partisan, but work across the aisle, and I can't thank you enough for that leadership. That's going to keep things moving in the right direction. I've been doing this 9 years. I work very well with Governor Granholm. I work pretty well with Governor Snyder. I'm going to write a book. Tom asked me, I'm going to write a book when I'm done. I'm going to detox for about 6 months, but there's a story to be told, and it's not pretty. Seriously, it's not pretty. This is not the way to run an airline. It is what it is. We've got the system that's in place, but it's not kid-oriented. And my view is you need to be kid-oriented first, and a close second would be teacher-oriented. On that count, I want to just start out with something we did to show some love for teachers. Some of you might have seen this. We sent it out yesterday. It depends on whether you're on our list or not.
Oh.
Nougat. Yeah. What's this one here? Put that. Oh, kind of a coconut. Let me know when we're on, okay, when we're going?
Yeah, we're going.
Well, hi. I'm State Superintendent Mike Flanagan, and it's Valentine's week, and no better time to share our love for teachers. These are the teachers with whom we work alongside, the teachers we've had as students, even the teachers in our family. My daughter Krista being the teacher in our family. And you know, as important as it is that we show our love and appreciation for teachers, it's also important to recognize the love that teachers have for their work and their profession. Too often people think of teaching as a job. Actually, it's a love and a passion that our teachers have. A friend of mine, last year's Teacher of the Year, Gary Aboud, has helped create a national social media campaign this week for educators to share what they love about teaching, and for anyone to share what they love about their teachers. It's #LoveTeaching. This week, Valentine's week. So I encourage everyone to share with the world what they love about teaching. I know that I will. And here's a short video from Gary that he's provided to show us how to do that. And this is what I'm going to give to my favorite teacher, my daughter. Can you stand up and let's thank them for joining the profession? This is going to be the most important. My daughter's a high school teacher, has a 2-year-old child, our grandson, public school teacher here in Michigan. And by the way, don't do this if you're offered. She's half-time teaching, half-time counseling, which really means you're full-time counseling, half-time teaching. It's really a very difficult thing to do. And I do thank you. I think Carolyn said it, Nick and Dirk all pointed out that we can only do this if we get the right people in front of our kids who develop relationships with the kids. I couldn't agree with you more. And there's a point where I get a little tired of hearing media types that say, well, just be like Finland. First of all, Finland is half the size of this state, has no diversity and no poverty to speak of. And the last thing they have is culturally, the most respected profession is what? Teaching. And I say this respectfully here in this great institution, there's something ironic, I think, that there's like almost automatic prestige if you're a professor, and you got to really work at it if you're a K-12 teacher. And we've got to have the same kind of prestige for K-12 teachers as you have in this great university. And then it is what it is for now, so I can't thank you enough. In addition to some of the struggles that public ed has had the last few years. We're in a depression. Unlike other states, we have higher poverty than virtually anyone else. And this is a struggle, but it can be done, and we need you. I also want to say, I do these things a fair amount of time. There is never a university president in the audience, and I can't thank Tom enough. Seriously. I very much appreciate you. Not only one of the best university presidents in the state, in the country. And I think when you look at what's happened in this institution over the 50 years, it's really my privilege to be here, and why we said, in spite of the team saying, you can't do this on a state board day, it's never going to work out, I jumped at this chance because I respect the university so much, microphones, you can't hear me. Okay, so should I start over? Is that right? Did you hear virtually nothing? Okay, well, this will be better then, but anyway, another hand for Tom Hodge, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, Doug, I didn't realize. I should have thought of that. So, and the dean, is Dean Collins here? No, she wasn't able to make tonight, but I really respect what's been done, and I just a few points about the actual institution here. My son Brian had an office upstairs here, and my daughter-in-law was in admissions here. They both since have been recruited to other places, and not because they wanted to leave, they loved it here. This was like the best experience they've ever had. In fact, my son Brian, who's a Notre Dame kid, U of M recruited him, and he called me, he said, I hate Michigan, I'm not going to Michigan. And I said, Brian, at least talk to them. I mean, there's an opportunity, and they wanted to get closer to Southeast Michigan, so they ended up doing it. But they had such a great experience, and it's made this a dear place for me also. And I'm a Notre Dame alum, which normally I don't admit, because that's not, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. It wasn't like a bad thing there. Here it's like, oh my God. So thanks for honing the skills of Kelly. We really appreciate the work that you did on him to help him do a better job down there than we've had for 20 years. I would like to say that, can I briefly comment on the panels? First of all, I thought they were outstanding. If you don't know this, and I don't have to say this, these are three of the most outstanding people in the state. You're very lucky in the west side of Michigan here to have outstanding people leading your schools, and thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight. I enjoyed every moment of it. My quick answers to Doug's questions: what do you believe the greatest challenge? I pretty much echo it. I think it's poor rural and urban. We have not, it's my biggest embarrassment, personally. I was the Wayne ISD superintendent. We had 230,000 kids there. Detroit at the time had 160,000 kids or something like that. And we just have not been able to make the changes we need to for rural and urban poverty kids. And I was superintendent of Farmington Hills over 20 years ago, thought of as a rich district. Actually not. We bordered Detroit, and lots of these kids were struggling. And in those days, we didn't disaggregate data. At least it wasn't done by the state or the feds. We did it on our own. And this is a true story. I came within one vote of being fired. I was young 30s, I had babies, and it was because don't show your dirty linen. Why are you talking about our weak spots? Academically, if you take the average, we're doing very well. And it's because out of 35 schools, we had 8 of them that I wouldn't send my own grandkids to. At the time, I wouldn't have sent my own kids to. So we needed to know what the problem was. When you know the problem, you can do something about it. And one of our problems was we were doing a lousy job on helping women succeed in math and science. But I remember at the time of coming within one vote of being fired that there wasn't an acceptance of that. I mean, I was even seen as a pariah to some degree by the staff because it was like, what are you criticizing us for? I'm just saying we're at a point where let's understand the data. The women were doing better than the men in elementary, just like everyone else at the time. We were evening out in middle school, and then we lost the women in math and science in high school. I know there are 40-some-year-old women today who are engineers and scientists that would not have been that if we didn't step up to it there. So data is good. Data can make a difference. We can't use it to bash teachers and to bash each other, but we should use it to get better. And guess who led this in Farmington at the time? Guess what subgroup led that effort? Science and math women teachers. At first, they were angry with me, but they started to videotape. Those are those big machines you used to have in those days that you have to walk around like this with, and videotape their own lessons, and they realized, this was kind of more commonly known later, but they realized what the research was also showing, which is, what do you think it was that was inadvertently adding to this problem? We were in general, I'm generalizing here, calling on men, reinforcing with the men. And as a result, when the women teachers in particular caught themselves doing that, you're sending a message subliminally, if nothing else, if you're calling on the men constantly. Well, it's science and math, we're not going to ask the women what they think. They changed this around so that it turned around in 2 years. And I'm so proud. It's one of the proudest things I've watched a team do in my whole time. But we're struggling with this. So I'm not partisan, but we work the governor hard on early childhood. And I would just say this, I like him as a man. In some forums, I'm not supposed to say that. I do like him as a man. I don't agree with all of his policies. In fact, one quick story was I had come out against right to work, and I had come out against taking the cap off charters at the time 2 years ago. I just thought we weren't ready to move on to this next plateau. And I also thought it's piling on. It looks like it's anti-teachers. But at any rate, and make a long story short, I told my wife, we got to get out of town, hon. I'm really feeling it, and I don't like being at odds with him, and I hold my I keep my powder dry. I want to support what we can as a board and as a governor and as a legislative team. We go to get on the plane, and my wife says, I think that's Governor Snyder on the plane. And I said, no, he'd be up in first class. Oh, no, first of all, a politician's not going to be in first class. But secondly, and I've said this in front of him, so I don't think I'm being rude. He's just cheap. He's cheap. He's got like $200 million, and the guy. So I go to sit. I'm walking back, and Anna says, we have a seat on each side of the aisle for the first time, so we both could get out. And as I'm walking back, who am I next to? Governor Snyder and his bodyguard. And I sit down and he says, Mike, I see you were in the papers a lot the last week. And it's like, and I'm ready to explain, because he's still a governor, and he deserves respect, and I do respect him. And I'm ready to explain why, and he stopped me and he said, you're the state superintendent, we won't always be on the same page. I'm okay with that. He's not always okay with that, by the way, not lately, but he was that day. But at any rate, he had an iPad here and some other kind of instrument here, and he said, if you download it over here and move it over here, you save $1. I said, Governor, this nerd thing, it's like going too far, the nerd piece here. But what I want to say to him, very much to his credit, it'll be somewhere in my book, just like I'll have a lot of positives to say about Governor Granholm, is his second year he got the early childhood thing. He just didn't get it intuitively, and it's not an easy thing intuitively if you don't know what we know as educators. So, hey, $135 million into poor 4-year-olds is starting to help that urban gap and that rural gap. It's unconscionable that we're like people worry that we're number 17 in math or whatever it is, and some of these, we're number 32 in support of preschool kids in the world. I mean, so anything above 32, we're actually doing pretty well, if you think of it from that point of view. That was a hard lift for him, to be blunt, as a Republican, to go across the street and try to sell it to a Republican House and Senate. And it took 2 years to get it done, and we're done. And it's one of our proudest accomplishments, because he acknowledges this, and I appreciate it, that we convinced him, you can't get to third grade reading if you don't help these kids from prenatal on. It's all over. We kind of invest in the wrong places, and so he's starting to move in that direction. I appreciate it. Tomorrow he's going to unload the budget. I've got a preview today, and I think there's some more good news in there along those lines. Second part, what do you believe is the greatest hope? It's about what you do here. It's the best prepared teachers are our hope. This isn't going to happen without the best prepared teachers. So it is disappointing. I've heard the same thing that I know Dirk has, that my daughter texts me once in a while like, Dad, what are you doing? That's painful when, the legislature passes a law, I'm ordered to implement it, and then, of course, what the hell are you doing, Dad? But it's because it is hard not to see reforms. I even feel this as state superintendent. It's hard not to feel it's a criticism. I mean, why do we have to reform? We're doing the best we can. We have to reform because there's places we aren't doing well. And we need to own up to it and be willing to move on and do it with a positive attitude. What does a vision for greatness look like? I found myself almost as a robot saying for 30 years, all kids can learn, all kids can learn, all kids can learn. And I believe that. But I think we have to move in terms of kind of a vision, each kid. Because what we can lose with all kids can learn is you can let each kid slip through. So it's trying to change that mindset that if it's your son, daughter, grandkid, nephew, next door neighbor that's not making it, it's a problem. If it's some other's kid, I mean, let's face it, the Michigan Merit Curriculum, and we tried to work that through, and we successfully got it through a number of years. Thank Nick and some others for that. This was really a controversy that we thought all kids could learn algebra. But the dirty little secret is we were taking those kids and moving them into remedial math and watered down math before we even tried. That was a scandal. It's over. There's some ways to get around that. If it really is that a child, you've tried everything and it's not, there's a thing called the personal curriculum. But that was a moral issue that we had to finally address. And that's helped reading scores, third grade readings going up every year for 10 years. ACT scores are going up every year. Third grade reading is going up every year. And it's because incrementally these changes make a difference. And if you left the district and came back and walked into high school in 5 years, what would you see? I really think the explosion we're going to see are teacher-led apps that will thoughtfully work in how to have the face-to-face personal relationship, but something that real teachers have worked into in terms of apps. I'm talking about iPad-type apps. And I think some of you will be the first generation of educational entrepreneurs. There will be a billion-dollar teacher because there will be a teacher that will have thought this through enough and led it with their own kids. And it might be in the form of an app, or let's face it, 10 years ago, an app was applying to college. So whatever the new term will be 5 years from now, and whatever the new technology, there'll be something like that, and there'll be educator entrepreneurs who will help spread this to almost 2 million kids here in Michigan, not to mention the rest of the world. GVSU, I just can't thank you enough. You have a steady record of producing excellent teachers. It means everything to us. Sometimes we're a little bit at odds because our job under federal law is to try to put, metrics and some of this other stuff together, and it feels painful, even to us at times. But even with that, 95% of your programs posting pass rates of 80% or better on teacher licensure tests. Your teacher prep programs are nationally recognized for excellence. In your most recent accreditation cycle, 100% of your programs seeking recognition by national accrediting bodies received that. That's unheard of, by the way. Your teacher prep units recognized by NCATE, meeting all the rigorous standards for program quality. Graduates here have had a significant impact on the community. I think Nick said he was one, but there's a lot of them in this arena. And year by year, Grand Valley graduates nearly 10% of the teachers in our workforce here. That's a gigantic contribution to the future of this state. And don't ever underestimate it, and don't ever feel underappreciated for it. I can't thank you enough. And according to the most recent survey that we do under kind of federal law, but with program graduates, over 70% here were able to find jobs right away. And furthermore, 95% of the teachers who graduated from here were rated highly effective by their employers. That's a big deal, and congratulations. I hear praise about this institution all the time. You should feel proud. And according to the most recent survey of program graduates, over 90% of respondents praised their experience at Grand Valley for their abilities to design high-quality learning experiences, to apply critical thinking, organize learning environments, and effectively use assessments, data, and technology, all for the benefit of our kids and for student achievement. This is also unheard of. So you're right at the top of the pile here, and just please keep it up. And I would ask you to all share this. I don't know if there's kind of competitive stuff among the 32 teacher prep institutions, but to the degree that you're willing to share what works well for you, for others that are struggling more, you'd be doing a great service. I've already covered a few of these. Sorry, this is what happens when I jump around. I really appreciate the active cooperation you have with the department. I think it's helping us get better. We're not perfect. We've made our share of mistakes, but we can always use an active voice to tell us how to improve. And I think, well, let me just say, those were a few things I wanted to mention to try to recognize the 50 years of high quality, but particularly what's been done in the recent decade. And thank you so much for that. in my job, it's funny, one of the things asked of me was to just, do you have any advice for us? So I'm going to just briefly say, I don't have advice because people really don't want advice. They might be polite and say, you have any advice? But I have learned a few things, and I thought I would just mention one or two. One is that, especially for you young folks, I'm ready to transition this year when I retire from a human doing to a human being. Don't fall into the trap. I mean, in some of these jobs you can get into, you're just doing, and you have to have a real life in addition to that. Don't wait till you retire. Be wary of what most people want. Henry Ford said, if I asked most people, they would have wanted faster horses. Be aware of what our limited senses actually tell us. There's a reality beyond. I mean, dogs can even smell better than us, so we're not really at the top of the pile here. And just kind of have a certain humility with that. Teachers are the #1 force for good in the world. I've given this advice to 11 people who've talked to me about applying for the job that I'm in right now. The key to me is want to do something, not be something. And 2 of them were candid enough with me to say, you know, they called me back a few days later and they're not going to apply because they said, you know, they think it's just checking off a box. They want to be something. And I hope that that's what you would learn, is you want to get through and actually be able to do something. And finally, learn from Blockbuster. You know, those are those stores that now the medical marijuana places are in. So they didn't get ahead of the curve quick enough. So we need to do that together. Now I think we're going to do some Q&A, and I'm happy to be part of that. And then I wanted to just close with one quick video. So thank you for this part of the program, at least.